This is Eric Rutan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
G'day everybody, thanks so much for tuning into this conversation which features Craig Locicero from Forbidden. Now the catalyst for the chat with Craig is due to the fact that Forbidden are back, and they are back in a big way. They're on the festival circuit and who knows what the future holds, but you'll get plenty of glimpses into what that might be, courtesy of the insight that Craig shares throughout the conversation, which also features some deep insight into his time with Chuck Schuldiner and Death, and also Jeff Tate. He played on a Queensryche album, you may not be aware. He talks all about that as well. Now, toward the end of the conversation, we started talking about current affairs, social and political matters, so hopefully we can connect sometime in the near future, particularly around the time of the US federal election. That would be interesting, because I have a feeling Craig and I would agree on a lot of topics, but there's others that we wouldn't. And I think that's a great thing. I think diversity of thought and opinion is what makes the world go round. Okay, if you are tuning in via the podcast apps, I have a tune to share with you. I have selected one from way back off an album called Forbidden Evil. This one's titled Chalice of Blood, and once it's done, we'll dive into the conversation. You people on YouTube, you know the drill. I can't play music, so you'll hear the chat now. Either way, let's do it.
What I see is a seven kiss. Congregation makes a list. Pass around your money plates. Gather round to build a case. Welcome to the church of lies. Dogs will die. A breeze will cry. Man will die. Welcome to the church of lies. Chalice of blood waits to feel lost. Chalice of blood. Priest, an evil man, mark of death fills his hand. Black and white turn to gray in blasphemy. He will pray, deceived by religion. He will see, run in panic. He will flee out of heaven. He will fall, be too rich, he has it all. Welcome to the church of lies. Doves will die. A priest will cry. Man will die. Welcome to the church of lies. Chalice of blood waits to feel lost. Chalice of blood.
Craig, how are you, mate?
Good, man. Australia.
Spot on. Yep, Gold Coast.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I saw there was a country code, but I didn't recognize it. I should have, because I have one of my best friends lives out there in Melbourne.
Ah, sweet. Yeah, a couple of thousand kilometres south, but nice part of the world, mate, when they're not in those huge bloody lockdowns, put it that way.
God, it got crazy for a while. So where are you at exactly?
Gold Coast, so just south of Brisbane.
Oh, okay. I was going to say Brisbane. So you're way down there. You're at the bottom of the world.
Oh, Australia is, yeah, but I'm probably, I suppose it'd be in the subtropical middle where we are. So beach country, like Florida.
Oh, no, I was thinking of Adelaide. That's the lowest. Yeah, it doesn't get any lower than that, right?
I think Hobart, actually, if you talk about low, the Tasmania is right down there. Hobart's freezing but beautiful. My God, it's a stunning part of the world. But a bit different to where I'm from, that's for sure.
Okay. All right. I just like to know where when I'm talking to people, if you're telling me you're from Cleveland, I'm like, okay, cool. Right on. Cleveland, yeah.
Yeah. Australia's like the United States in that there's so much. We even get snow here, believe it or not. Not a lot of people from North America know that, but we've got snowfields, believe it or not. They're in New South Wales and parts of Victoria. So, but I've only visited them a couple of times. It's a bit too cold for me, mate.
Yeah, I was actually, not that we should spend a whole bunch of time talking about this, but I actually watched a documentary that explained why the outback is so empty. Like how the mountainous ranges steal the cold air that would drop rain on the middle of that part of the continent. So I was like learning all this stuff. I'm like, that's why. So these are always going to be kind of just desolate in the middle of Australia. And it's like, why don't many people? I think it was on YouTube actually. Like, why don't people live in the middle of Australia and all that land? So they explained it all rather well.
Yeah, there's something like less than, I could be wrong here with the statistic, but it's something like less than 20% of the available land is habitable in Australia. So there you go. So that explains why there's 23, 24 million of us on this huge continental mass. But, mate, there's just not many places human civilization can flourish, clearly, because, for tens of thousands of years it was hunter-gatherer culture, and it just doesn't support building cities and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Then not to mention your fucking spider season and fucking burning, exploding bushes. I mean, what the fuck?
Yeah, we get lots of snakes. The truth is, mate, the real danger starts in the water, especially just a couple of 100 kilometres north of me. That's when you start getting irukandji jellyfish, which are almost microscopic. You can see them. They're tiny. You get stung by one of them, mate, just have a look at some YouTube videos. There's some Swedish tourists or whatever who jumped into the wrong part of the water and got stung by an irukandji jellyfish. That shit lasts for tens of hours, I think, in terms of the agony of it. Then you got the crocodiles and, of course, the big ones, the sharks. And every week, mate, someone's getting bitten by one. So,
not to mention the insult to injury when you get stung by a jellyfish, you have to have someone piss on you. Like,
oh yeah, I think
unless you're into that kind of
thing. Yeah. I don't know. I think I'd rather stay stung, to be honest with you, but it could just be me, eh?
Well, we'll see what you're feeling like when your insides are ready to turn inside out. All right. Anyway, let's rock and roll.
I've listened to a few of your interviews, and look, it sounds like a bit of a sliding doors moment with the Anthrax and the Alcatraz Metal Festival being the catalyst for your return. Is that it in a nutshell? And do you feel as though the band has unfinished business all the same?
Oh yeah, we've definitely. I mean, we've had unfinished business. We never. The thing about Forbidden is it's a band that's predicated and lived in the unfinished business universe. It just never kind of had everything work out, and it attributes to a lot of different reasons. And some of it's bad luck, and some of it's not bad luck. So it's just the way I mean, you could call it bad luck, but I don't think so. But yeah, I honestly, if you've been watching any of the interviews or listening to anything, then and it's true. I did not think I was going to be doing anything like this without Russ, because I knew Russ was retired. So out of respect to him, I just kind of like, put it down. But he told me years ago, he's like, if you ever want to do it, do it. I can't do it. So when the time came, sorry about my phone. Actually, you know what? Let me turn that ringer off. If you don't, is it going to bother you? Actually, should I just just let it go?
No, it's no worries for me.
It should be turned down. Yeah, it should be turned. Anyway, but so I didn't really foresee my soothsayer abilities were not working, and I didn't see this one coming. So, it was like a lot of things came into play. And, once that email did arrive from Alcatraz Festival saying, would you be willing to play this slot? A bunch of other things happened behind me that made me realize it could be done. And I was like, oh, well, fuck. I've run out of excuses, like I've got a great singer who's capable, more than capable, and will command the way that, a crowd expects a Forbidden show to be commanded. Because Russ just wasn't feeling like that for the last few years. It was hard for him to get motivated and get up. The alcohol, his physical ailments, having a little spark there is going to be pretty significant, I think, when people see Norman Skinner.
Killer. Yeah. Hey, look, as I say, I've listened to a fair few of your interviews, so there's some copy out there already. So I've made an effort here to come up with some different questions for you, ones that I don't.
I can answer whatever you got. I got time. We're good. We got at least 45 minutes here, so we're all right.
Let's talk about the album Green, okay? Because that's an album that never gets mentioned, yet I feel it's my personal favorite. I won't say it's your best one or what have you, but it's certainly my personal favorite from you guys. That's my era, meaning the 90s. Metal Maniacs, I remember they gave it a rap, so I thought I'd check it out. There were a couple of writers there like Craig Zala that I really liked, and they were generally on my wavelength, so that's how I used to get into things back then. And I still think it sounds like a very modern metal album. It's heavy, it's groovy, and it's very dark. But here's the question for you. It also contains what I believe is some of your best guitar playing from the perspective that it expanded your technique and you evolved to become not just fast, but a lot heavier as well. Do you agree?
Sure. I mean, you got to understand, like, for me personally, my trajectory as a guitar player, just to give you some perspective. I joined Forbidden Evil in 1985. I've been playing for barely a year. Okay. Rob Flynn was the leader at that time, and I looked up to him. I knew him for about the entire time I played guitar. I knew Rob. I got a guitar, and then I met him, and then we became friends. And then I wasn't good enough, and then all of a sudden an opportunity came, and I was just good enough. So my evolving as a player happened incredibly fast with Rob being there. And then once we needed another guitar player, we found Glenn. And then, Glenn wasn't a thrash metal guy, at all. He was like he came from the glam and rock and roll school, like George Lynch and Eddie Van Halen and Yngwie and those guys. So, but it worked, right? But when we got Tim Calvert, that was a huge leap because, again, not a thrash guy, but an incredible guitar player, well versed in songwriting structures. And, not having thrash guys next to me actually made me a lot better because I was definitely a thrash guy. And then, but I'm also a Beatles guy, you know what I mean? Like I grew up on the Beatles, and so I've had this sensibility always of, I guess just great songwriting and structures and things like that. So, you got to remember, so Twisted into Form happens. It's this great merging of two minds that actually worked great together. It was the teamwork for Tim Calvert and myself was incredible. So, when that's all over with, everything in the music industry basically changes. And we were still, we were evolving like at another fucking breakneck amount. Like we had songs for the demoed that were just like light years ahead of what everyone else was doing as far as, melodically and, the compositions and stuff. But the industry had just changed. And when grunge, as people like to call it now, it wasn't grunge when I knew it. It was rock. It was heavy rock from Seattle and other places. When that shit came along, I immediately knew that it's going to change the industry as soon as I heard Alice in Chains and Facelift before the album came out. Or even when I heard Soundgarden's, it was Loud Love. And I loved them immediately because I felt like they just pushed everything off, like this thrash metal shit's cool, but it's getting a little rigid. It's getting a little formulatic. I'm getting a little bored. And then here come these rock and roll bands coming out here, making these great, grandiose, more melodic, deep recordings. So that's what you kind of get to when we start going in. It's not that we consciously changed our direction at all when we did Distortion, but the industry had changed so much. Our version of thrash had evolved a bit, and it was still very technical. So we do all that, then we're finished. We're kind of frustrated. I'm getting to Green. we're finished and we're kind of frustrated, and we're like, we should, it's just too bad that this great album got overlooked in the United States. In Europe, Distortion, I'm talking about. In Europe, it was really responded to very favorably. We did a very successful tour. We come back home, we tour with fucking Testament, and it's like half packed. Not, this is Testament. Like, this is not great. And then we toured Malevolent Creation, where we're headlining, and it's like, this is okay, but we were frustrated. So when we wrote Green, you had a lot of pent up, fuck you, full on fucking anger, like we don't give a fuck. But this is mostly coming from myself and Steve Jacobs, the drummer. We were completely locked in, like we're just gonna completely rip a hole through everything, and it's gonna be like our caveman record, and that's the way we kind of looked at it. So we use our anger that way, and everybody contributed great stuff. But like Steve and I were really locked into this, and that's what you hear on that record. There's a lot of anger. Of course, it's tuned lower, which we'd never really done before. But I was listening to Sabbath. I was on a huge Sabbath kick at that time, and I was really getting into everything from like Masters of Reality to Sabotage, like in that era, and that was all C sharp stuff mostly. So we were starting to fuck around with some stuff in C sharp, and it just flowed. I was feeling every bit of it. I wrote a lot about my life without really realizing it. There's a lot of things going on there. And I don't really have an explanation for it, but I do know it influenced a lot of other bigger bands that came up in the late 90s and early 2000s that I never knew about until later.
Can you name one? That's interesting.
Lamb of God, Shadows Fall, Slipknot, that down that line, God forbid, all the new, they weren't new metal bands, all the
newer metal bands. Yeah.
What do they call metalcore? Like a lot of the metalcore stuff. And individually as time went on, I started to realize it. My first inkling, because I'd gone on to do Man Made God after that, which was like, started as very experimental, and then we refined it and became a really great rock band and got signed by American, Rick Rubin, and all that blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. But we went on to one of our first tours I went on was with Murder Dolls, which was Joey Jordison. And he didn't know who the fuck I was for the first week of the tour. And, he's like, I could tell he was like, whatever, just this rock band, we were not new metal. We were not fucking anything. We were like classic metal, like, or not classic metal, classic rock, like kind of I say it was like a cross between, say, Foreigner and Bad Company and Soundgarden. It was way more, but we didn't fit with anyone. So Jacobs and the other guys go out one night and they run into Joey at a bar. I think it was a strip club, as a matter of fact. And Joey starts asking my drummer, "Hey, what's up with your band? And who's that guitar player?" And da. So, we used to be in this little thrash metal band. What was it called? He's like, Forbidden. He freaked out. He's like, "That's Craig? Oh shit." So then he came up to me the next day. He's like, "Dude," and he had a gazillion questions, and it was mostly about Green. That album was, he said that album was a huge influence on him writing the riffs for the first Slipknot record. And you could hear those little da-da-da-da-da-da. There's like those little moments in there, like Face Down Hero type thing and stuff like that. So I didn't know. And that was the beginning of a onslaught of running into bands on tour and people being like, "Dude, Green, a lot."
Okay, there you go. Okay, yeah. So it sort of negates my next question would be, which is that do you feel that album should get more respect in your catalogue? It already does, clearly. But one of the interesting things that I note just in your timeline of events is that episode, I think I'm right in saying this, that was your first recorded output after spending time with Chuck in Death as Chuck's guitarist.
No, Distortion was. Distortion was.
There you go.
But Distortion was pretty much written, though. In fact, when I went out with Chuck and Death, I had the Distortion demo that got us signed with me that I was handing out. And that's what got us signed when we got back home. We got our first bites from Europe and signed with Gun, which was part of BMG. So that was started as a really good thing. But no, Chuck didn't really shit, dude. If it would have been more influenced by Death, then it probably would have been more like more solos and more,
That was going to be my point.
Chuck was, Chuck was very, very like classic metal oriented, even though in fact, I mean, it's pretty well documented. He felt trapped a little bit by having to do the vocals in Death. And, he really wanted to do things that are much more melodic. It was Control Denied kind of demonstrates where he wanted to go. And he loved, classic heavy metal. I mean, he embraced the cheese, in metal. He had no problem with like Invisible Grapefruits and, stuff like that. And more power to him. I love him for that, man. And when Painkiller came out, before Painkiller came out, he visited us in Tampa when we played a show, Forbidden played in 1990. And he had the cassette, pre-cassette of that album. And we were like driving around listening to Painkiller. He's all, dude, it's so metal. I can't even believe how metal it is. He loves that shit.
What are some of your more prominent memories of working with Chuck?
They're all good. I think what happens with a lot of people that played with Chuck over a long period of time is that he was definitely paranoid. I mean, it was undiagnosed, the brain stuff that he had going on. So since I played with him basically for 3 weeks, no problem. It was good. Easiest time we both ever had. The guys in the band had commented since, and that was the best lineup of Death that ever gotten along with each other. And that was funny because I'm used to being a leader in my own band, and I didn't have to be a leader. I was a soldier, and it was really cool taking the lead from somebody, and he gave me complete freedom to, play the rhythms however you want to, or no, play the rhythms how they go, but do whatever your solos, feel them out. Doesn't matter. You don't have to figure out these things. We didn't have time. I didn't even have time to sit down and start noodling through every solo, note for note, because I literally only had 2 days to learn the entire record before we went on tour.
Oh my God. Yeah. Wow. Shit. Okay. What was there ever hinted or potentially discussed about you joining full time?
Yeah, he did. After a couple of weeks, he asked me if I was interested in finishing the tour and writing a record with him. And writing with him. He wanted me to write with him, which is something that he doesn't really offer up to other guitar players. Historically, I know that. So, but I mean, I was so loyal to Forbidden, and I believed in the band. We were just about to get a record deal. There was a little resentment coming from the Forbidden camp at the time. They weren't exactly stoked that I left them to go, do something other than Forbidden, because we were all suffering the same purgatory for years. Like no one's really interested in the band, and then here I am getting this opportunity. They thought I might leave, but I didn't. I'm a loyal guy.
Were you mates with Ralph Santola back in the day?
I mean, he was my friend, dude. I loved Ralph, but I mean, he was, he drank too much. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. But he was also highly intelligent, great theory, the music theory guy, great guitar player, sweet man, like big heart. But he drank too fucking much, and it took a toll on him.
Yeah, he told me a story once where he thought that he was listening to you play on one of the one of the additional live bonus discs that came out with individual thought patterns, and I think then he worked out it was him. But I remember him saying to me that he was raving to you about, hey, listen to all this great guitar playing, and it was actually him. I thought that was one of the more funnier anecdotes that he shared with me.
It's true. No, that's true. And because somebody fucked up, with Chuck not around, there wasn't enough fact checking, and they grabbed I think it was the previous tour before the one I went to Europe. They grabbed some stuff and they just threw my name on there, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Let me listen. That's not me. I knew it wasn't me, because he was actually trying to play things note for note, and I was not. So I was like, come on. But yeah, no, I love Ralph, dude. I think the world misses his fun. He had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a shock, to be honest with you, because I only spoke to him within 12 months before he passed, I think it was. And the night before he passed, I was actually talking to one of his best friends, Bjorn from Soilwork, who he spent some time living over in Sweden with. And it was so serendipitous that I was talking to Bjorn, one of his other best mates. And I think about 6 months later, I was on the phone to Bill Hudson, who was beside his bed when he passed away. And just in the course of doing what I do here, of course, I don't know them outside of these sort of conversations. But Yeah, he's sort of Mr. Everywhere, Mr. Kevin Bacon, sort of, 6 degrees of separation, Ralph Santola, and that he seemed to have something to do with anybody and everybody. And I haven't come across a word. Maybe Glenn Benton might have something bad to say about him, but I'm sure Glenn has something bad to say about plenty of people. But yeah.
I mean, anyone can see. We can cherry pick I tend to not cherry pick the bad things about people. What we call that, the 666 degrees of Santala.
I think so, mate. It's going to stick now, I think, after this chat. I think it will. Let's talk about Forbidden again, though. So your debut, it is considered one of the great debuts in thrash metal. How do you feel nowadays? Because is it 40 years ago now or thereabouts, 35
Not
years
quite.
ago?
35, yeah. It's right around the corner.
Yeah. But do you feel like as though that is the album that defines Forbidden?
No, not at all. But I mean, that's not for me to decide. Black Sabbath doesn't have a choice. Paranoid defines Black Sabbath. That's not their choice. That's just what people decide. So at the same time, I think just as many people think that Twisted in a Form defines us as well. And, each one in some, the thing about Forbidden is that people will literally argue about what their favorite record is all the way down the line. But the first two got the most exposure. So those are going to always win in your landslide of, knowing what you're talking about. But a lot of people, when Omega Wave came out, they didn't know about it as much. But I keep finding out from doing these interviews that people are like, now that's my favorite Forbidden album because it had a little bit of everything, and it was very clear. It was very concise. We knew what we were doing. We had time to write it. It was, I think with the first record, they say your first record takes your whole life to write. The next record takes 6 months or whatever. That's kind of how it was. Like Forbidden Evil was written with 3 guitar players, really, with Rob writing part of it with me and then Glenn writing part of it with me. So it was, it had that going for it. And then we got a lot more refined as we went along. But everyone likes what they like, and you can't really tell somebody what the best of something is. I find that that's just insulting to them and to me. Like, just like what you like. Forbidden Evil's not a mature record, but yet if you think about how old we were, it's insanely mature. It's like I listen to the lyrics, I'm like, oh, but then I'm like, well, I was fucking 18 or 7. When that I was being written, it went from the age of 15 to 18 for me. I turned 19 in the studio.
You were I noticed that when I looked on Wikipedia to see how old you were. You were basically a school kid back then.
Yeah, I went straight out of high school, and through that summer, I think, it didn't take us long before we got a lot of interest. We made the demo right out of high school that got us signed. And, it's just a whirlwind of things happened. And, as a consequence for me personally, and I can only speak for myself, I missed a lot of maturity. I didn't grow much mentally until after Twisted in a Form, because I had more time to sit back and take stock of who the fuck I was and what the fuck I was doing. It's just when you start that young, man, it can fuck your head up. And I feel like it fucked my head up a fair share.
What was your parents' opinion of you being involved in the music industry at such a young age?
Well, my dad had lived in Vegas, and he was a history professor at UNLV. Actually, he had his doctorate, and he ended up being like, he was a brilliant man, but he didn't understand what the fuck was going on. My mom knew that this school wasn't doing it for me. He really wants to play guitar. It's quieter than drums. Let's let him play guitar. So my first year of high school, about 3 or 4 months into school, I got my first guitar, and that's where that whole thing started. So she was supportive. Once she realized, that I was actually pretty good or gonna get good. Because like I said, I started out really fast, and all of a sudden I was like throwing riffs around with all these heavy hitters, She gave me support, and my dad, he was proud of me. He didn't know where it was all going to go, but he ended up passing away in early '92. So he didn't watch all the ups and downs after that. He just knew that I did a couple albums. As far as he saw, that was going well. and he didn't see all this stuff. He didn't get all that, but I mean, he was tolerant.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. What about back in 2010? It looked like For All Money you guys were back, and I think you mentioned in a recent interview that you're still technically with Nuclear Blast, but back then you had a new album out and you were on Nuclear Blast. So was that just a bit of a false start or something else?
Why did we stop?
Yeah.
Well, we had with our drummer Mark Hernandez, who had to basically leave the band at the worst possible time. When we were in Europe doing a couple festivals, he was getting ultimatums from his family and his wife. Basically it's me or your music. So he left when we were in Europe between two festival dates, Bloodstock and Brutal Assault. He left after Bloodstock, didn't leave, but said, I got to go. So we finished that show. It was very awkward. Finished that show the next day. And then we're like struggling because we were supposed to come back to Europe and do a tour. And he was going to play drums with me on that too, because he was in Demonica. So I had to find one drummer to do two things. It was crazy. So basically it's a long story but we ended up replacing him and finding, Gene Hoglan came in and did some shows for us, but he couldn't do that tour. We had to cancel the entire fucking tour a week before it happened, which is a disaster, So that was the first blow. And then we got Sasha Horn to play drums, who won a worldwide hunt for drummers. We had guys coming in from Australia, like Europe, like Italy, and it's everywhere. Like whoever was good enough. I told them, you don't, just because you're coming in from another country, you got to pay for it. And it doesn't mean you get the gig, but they still came in. And the guy who won lived in New Mexico, and now he's an exhorter. And he was great, but he came into a situation that was very, everybody just kind of like, this kind of sucks. It really hurt us to lose that tour. And then we went and did what turned out to be our last show at Metal Fest Chile, which is, great show, massive bill, 10,000 people inside an arena, playing with everybody from Testament, Creator, and Exodus, and Destruction, and, all of my peers, Annihilator, and it was great. And we were supposed to come home and get ready to go play Wacken, and Russ told me on the airplane he just wasn't into it. He didn't really want to travel anymore. He didn't really want to go to Wacken and just play for a day and then fly home a couple days later. The job, the dead. So I was just like, that was kind of the moment where I realized it was going to dry up. If we're canceling Wacken, I told him, if we're canceling Wacken, I refuse to push you to do this anymore. And his answer was, well, you'll do more. I'm like, not if you cancel Wacken, dude. So that was kind of the agreement. It wasn't like we quit. It was more like, I don't see it happening. So that was kind of it. It didn't exactly go like consciously, Brand's breaking up, fuck all this. It wasn't like anger. It was more like, fuck. It was like, fatigue, frustration. This business is tough. If you don't constantly work at it, you're not going to really gain a rung on the ladder, So, and he wasn't okay to do that. He didn't really want to do the work because physically it was hard, and he had the alcohol problem.
It's pretty tough on you as the band leader, though, isn't it? You got all these wonderful opportunities there, and you got your shit together, and you can see this bright future ahead. And people, for various reasons, as you've described, just aren't willing to participate and be part of the team.
Yeah, and ultimately, and I play with Mark in Dress to Dead, which is another band, and I've been playing with him for years. But ultimately, when it came to Forbidden coming back together, he was never in my equations because I can't rely on him to like be able to go on tour and do the things that need to be done without, some people it's just not in their makeup to be able to do it because their life is set up a certain way. So I was like, like a few times over the years, he'd be like, yeah, dude, like if Forbidden ever gets back together, I'm like, if Forbidden ever gets back together, remember you quit. Just because we're playing together in this band doesn't mean we're playing together in that band. So, and then, there enters Chris Contos.
I was going to say, it's not like you've gone backwards, is it? You've got one of those. No worries.
Little hay fever going on here.
Yeah, same, actually. Sorry. I just had to take some antihistamines before I got on the call. Yeah. But it's not like you've gone backwards. I mean, if anything, these trials and tribulations have set you up for a pretty glorious next few years, really, especially if Chris sticks around.
Potentially. I mean, Chris and I play together already in the Boneless Ones, and I've fucking been tight with Chris for 30 plus years, and I love him. We get along great. I don't know. I can't really describe it. I don't know exactly how to quantify our relationship, but when I decided we were going to do this show, I didn't know who the drummer was going to be. I had not made up my mind that I even want to approach Chris necessarily to be the guy, but I did call him and asked him if he'd be interested. Because, I mean, one of the things on the email that was sent to me is, would you be interested in having Chris Contos play drums? Because it would make a great story. And you play with him in the Boneless Ones. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I want to push it. We're such good friends. But he was great. The first thing I did when I told him is, look, I'm going to do this Forbidden thing. He's and I'm like, and I want to offer you an opportunity to try out and see if you like it. But I'm also going to talk to some other guys and see, where it lies. And I did. But Chris told me right off the bat, he's like, yeah, probably push our friendship. He gave me a bunch of names too. Like, that's how cool he was about it. He's like, what about this guy? What about that guy? So, which tells you how fucking mature he was about the entire thing. So I circled around, I talked to a bunch of people, and they all wanted to do it, but no one lived in town that was good enough, except for Mark. And I already explained that. So it just was not on the table. So I circled back around. I said, look, dude, I can pull the trigger on this and you cannot do it, but are you going to be resentful if you see me doing this and go like, I could have went and done that, that could have been something I fucking did. And he's all, fuck, you're right. So let's just fucking do it. So I'm glad he said yes. It's been great so far. The real work really begins this weekend when we start full rehearsals. But Chris is amazing. He's as good as any of the drummers that ever played in Forbidden in his own way. He's fucking exciting, he's got some hardcore and punk in him, which is always helpful to me. And I'm excited. I mean, he's as good as all those guys. They're all great. Each and every drummer that played in Forbidden is great.
Paul Bostaff, are you still mates with him?
Yeah, I am. But he's doing the Kerry King thing, and it's like super secret lockdown. Nobody can talk about it. No one hears about it because no one's allowed to talk about it. And I reached out to him, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll call you back." And never. But he knew. I think he knew that something was going to happen with Forbidden, like. And he can't do it. He just simply does not have the time. His life, once the Kerry King thing kicks off, that's going to be his focus. So I don't need a guy that's going to come in, put his toes in the water, and then go out. The people got to remember, Paul was in the band from 1986 to 1991, and that was it. Mm-hmm. That was it. Like, they're all, you bring Paul back. Like, guys, he did not have the time to do it, and nor was he really asked. I should say he was asked once. When we first did the reunion shows in 2008, I had asked him in 2007, before all that had happened, if he'd be interested in doing it, and he was. But as soon as the guys in Testament heard that he was going to come back to Forbidden, they needed a drummer, and they just went, whoop, and they just went and grabbed him, and he did Formation of Damnation. So that's why Gene Hoglan had to come in and step in. Because our drummers, I should mention also that Steve Jacobs, people have asked about Steve, and he played on Distortion and Green, and he's fucking amazing, but he damaged his shoulder really bad over the years, and he basically can't play drums like he used to. I don't even know if he plays them anymore at all, because he's so, hurt his shoulder so bad, which is a shame, because he was as talented, if not, the greatest drummer I've ever played with. He had a lot going on, man. He was really, really good, and it's too bad. I feel for him.
I don't know whether you'd call it a left turn in your career, but people might not realize that you were the guitarist. And I think you wrote the Queensryche album, or the banner that it was. How would you describe it? The Jeff Tate solo album that was released as a Queensryche album. You wrote that, didn't you?
I wrote to what was given to me and rewrote a lot of it. If I wrote it, it would have been a lot different. Okay. First, it's funny you're even asking this. Okay. First of all, I have a friend, Jason Slater, who just passed away a couple of years ago. He was a producer of that record, been my friend for a long time. brilliant guy, great guy, fucking tons of health ailments at the time. Things are going on, but Jeff had asked him, he's like, hey, can you do this record with me? It's got to be heavy and it's got to be very aggressive. And he's like, well, okay, like, what are you thinking? He's like, I just want it to be heavy. So he suggested me as a guitar player, and he knew Forbidden. He's like, oh, that guy, yeah, that'd be great. Guy from Forbidden would be great. It's all just the way that Jeff thinks is like very flighty. I'd like to tell you that he's, what would be the word I'd use? That he plods his fucking moves out and he's smart and strategic. There you go. But that's just not what he does. I mean, the whines and the fucking show tunes but I agreed. The price was right. I said, okay, but I told my friend Jason, I said, I'm going to work on him every day and tell him that this should not be a Queensryche album. This should be a Jeff Tate solo album. He's all, yeah, I will too. So we had this little thing where every day we'd find a moment to like needle him into like, hey, this new Jeff Tate solo record. But he'd already made a record deal with Cleopatra under the guys that he had to release the Queensryche record. They wanted Queensryche. So Jeff Tate's Queensryche was what it was. And every day I'd be like, dude, this is not a Queensryche record. You're not giving, there was very little time. We were basically, here's how it worked. I'd show up a day and they'd play me some demos that Jason wrote, all these musical demos that Jason basically had written. And I go, yeah, that one's okay. That's cool. And then we like start basically fucking re-recording guitars and I'd rewrite parts on the spot and make them sound more interesting. Some did sound a little Queensryche, but most of it was not. Even no matter what I did, would have never sounded like Queensryche. So, and I would just fly through the day and like, okay, double that. And like, okay, am I going to be able to go home and even work on this or learn? It's like, no, that's good enough. That's what the entire process was. I was like, gosh, holy shit, we are fucking, what are we doing here? So that's why I was so annoyed. I was actually really annoyed by the end of it at Jeff. I'm like, how could you let this happen, bro? Who's running your career for you? Like, this is, you just want to get it out so bad. You don't care if our shoelaces are tied together while we're running out the door to do it. And then, he wanted all these guitar players to come in and play solos instead of just having, like, I said, why don't we get another guy? Right. I actually suggested Tim Calvert. I said, let me get Tim. He's the biggest Queensryche fan I know. He would be fucking honored. It would be amazing. But I guess, oops, sorry about that. My computer shut off, so the light went dark here. But, it would be great if we get Tim to do it. But Tim was a pilot at the time, and I believe he just got diagnosed with ALS. Didn't know that at the time, but they weren't even into paying anybody else. They just wanted to pay me. Like, that's good enough. Or not they, Jeff and his wife, the manager. So that's how it kind of came together. And it was just a collection of demos that I had basically made sound better. And then we had different drummers playing. After I finished my tracks to a click, they put on different drummers, Simon Wright, Paul Bostaff, all these different, there's a guy named Evan Batista who was really good, who played on it, didn't get enough credit. Maybe there might have been one or two more drummers. But it was just a fucking mishmash of good musicians and no cohesiveness.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, look, I mean, your contribution is very good. It's got to be said. But yeah, right guitarist, wrong moment. That sort of a situation, I think. And I don't think people realise it's you that played all the guitars on it, except for the solos. I understand now. So I think it's. Would you include that album as a part of your broader discography, or do you sort of put it off to the side as one of those things?
Can I do both?
Of course you can.
I mean, it is a thing. It's a thing I did, and I'm not gonna deny that I did it. It's not a complete embarrassment or anything, but if I had done it my way, I would have had a couple months to work on it, go through those demos, weed it out, rewrite everything. If I didn't have another guitar player, I would have properly figured out alternate parts, so I'm not playing the same things, harmonized it. Really put my fucking better skills forward that I have, but there's just no time for it. So it's just like an aggressive, weird, odd mishmash.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. But yeah, your guitar playing stands up on it regardless. So look, you've been through a lot. You've done a lot. You've lived a lot of life. Okay, so the first part of my question is, what's been the most challenging episode of your life in relation to music so far?
Oof. I don't know if it's even forbidden. I think that the Man-Made God era that when I got to work with Rick Rubin and we were right on the brink of becoming a major band in America, major success, radio hit, before the album was even out, we had a song out on radio that was charting all over the country. And having that situation, having the album come out like a year and a half later than we wanted it to, because record labels were merging. It was a big thing going on. So it's a really heavy story, but working with Rick Rubin and having it kind of disappear because our singer just didn't have the mental stamina and capacity to work through it. Like, he didn't understand. This guy was great. His name is Pan. Fucking great. He's a cool dude, but he didn't get the amount of work it takes once your album's out or even before your album's out to win people over. He thought it was all going to happen overnight. That was his naive point of view of the world. So he got really frustrated, and the number of reasons brought it to the point where I was just like, fuck, I am not going to keep pushing this dude to understanding what he might never understand. So I kind of ended the band effectively. And I might have done it too soon. It was a bit of a heartbreak. And people get really, really emotional about that record because it is an emotional record. It brings out all kinds of happiness and tears. And so I've actually had people sit there and cry about that album to me, like have tears in their eyes, talking about how much it meant to them. And so it's kind of, it wasn't a thrash record. It was straight, like I was telling you, it was like real organic rock. And that might have been the most challenging thing, to have that band fizzle, because if it would have continued, who knows what I would have been doing. There might not have been any of this forbidden stuff, or because we probably would have been on our like 7th album by now or something, and I would have been living a different kind of life. But I like where I'm at right now, so I don't really have those kind of regrets. But that is probably the most difficult period I went through.
Yeah, you seem like as though you've got a contentedness of spirit, and you're talking about things in a matter-of-fact way. So on that note, and I'll make this my final question for you, you've got a heck of a story to share, so please tell me you're thinking about writing a biography.
I have. Years ago, when the world's changed so much, it was so funny. When I was younger, I was going to call that bio "When Drum Risers Mattered." Because like in the old days, everyone used to fight about the riser, like in the Bay Area shows, like, I'm not setting up in front of them, there's that whole thing. But it's things have changed dramatically since then. So that one doesn't stick. But yeah, I've been approached about doing that a bunch of times. And it would be an interesting book. I don't know if I could do a tell all, because I don't really want to bring people down, like I can tell most.
when you think you've given it up, like when you get to the Rolling Stones guys' age, that's when to do it. I think when you're in your 70s or 80s, years away.
They're
from
not giving it up till they're
now.
dead. Those guys aren't going to give up till they're dead. Charlie Watts was in that band till he died. Like it started with Brian Johnson or Brian Jones. Yeah.
Brian Jones, yeah, but they must be taking the baby's blood that Ellen DeGeneres takes. That adrenochrome or whatever it is. How the hell do they do it?
Don't, dude. That's a tool. That's a QAnon fucking.
I'm just joking.
That's a QAnon thing. Yeah, okay. Because I was a guy who's a conspiracy guy or former conspiracy guy. That fucking QAnon shit is the biggest crock of fucking crap. Once you're connecting a guy like Donald Trump into Jesus Christ, you got yourself in the wrong fucking rabbit hole. That's just fucking insanity. So that's what that whole thing is. But yeah, I've heard about it, and I think evidently they say it's been done for thousands of years, but you read
that's
a different subject.
The conspiracy theories.
I could talk about that shit for a long. Listen, yeah, I could go down that road for a long time, but I tell people I had to pull the ripcord and jump out of the fucking conspiracy plane once this whole Trump thing came along, dude. I was like, I'm out, because a lot of my friends stayed in and they got all, he's going to change. JFK Jr. is still alive, and stop it, you fucking morons. I feel bad for people that get sucked into that, because it is a fucked up world.
For an outlet. Yeah, they're just looking for an outlet, I think, and they're trying to make sense of life because not a lot makes sense because of all of it's really just the massive information we've got at the moment. I think it causes people to go a bit haywire.
Well, in the song Omega Wave, I really broached the subject, and, if you listen to the song, the whole middle section of that song, the middle breakdown, caught in a web of disinformation, that's where we are as people. You can't possibly know all the things you think you know because you're not in that lane, and unless you are, I had this conversation with Jamie Josta, and unless you are like, a blue-blooded family or in the CIA or have some sort of military clearance or you're fucking, a high-level politician or, you're not going to know any of this shit. You're just going to get hearsay. And the other issue, you can make up stories, story after story could be fed to you and you wouldn't know what's real, but you can believe them all.
Yeah, except for when there's been inquiries like with this Mueller report and the one that was just released last night about the bloody Hunter Biden laptop story and the Russian collusion stuff. The Democrats ran with that for so long and it was all bullshit. And unfortunately, when they run with these narratives, it feeds into this other stuff and people go, see, that was true. They were definitely deliberately hiding things, which it turns out is factually the case. And that means that they're start embellishing these. Well, look at Epstein's flight log. I'd love to see bloody who was on that. Bill Gates and Bill Clinton and all those psychos, and
Donald Trump. I mean, it's endless. These are scum. These people are scum, and and people that they're going to hold them up in a higher regard, and idolize them as somebody that's going to change the world. If you want to be a president, you have a problem. Your ego, there are no normal people that want to be a president. You know what I'm saying? So like, you just take your choice of what my favorite color is pink. My favorite color is green. They're all fucking scum and they're all fighting for their own self-preservation and putting the finances and the money where they want it for them and their people and their bankers and their, stocks and their everything. It's not going to change. That's what politics has turned into in the year 2020. Anything.
It's a little too authoritarian at the moment too. We've certainly had that here in Australia, and I know elements of. You're still in California, are you? San Francisco, or are you elsewhere these days?
Yeah, Bay Area. Yeah. No, we have our own problems here. It's not as bad as anyone says, but we have our own problems here. And I was on the tip of the iceberg, for all conspiracy stuff for many, many years, and like I said, I pulled out the ripcord when the Trump thing came along because I was like, I know this is getting to be cult. You're in a cult 45. It turned out to be, and I got out, and luckily I did. I have many friends who didn't, and I have one friend who basically lost his life because he believed everything, and he went insane, and he ended up getting killed in the crossfire of accusation, and there's just no way to fucking know what's real, man, unless you're in it. I watched some moron just today break off every half-baked conspiracy that he was asked in an 8-minute period that fell all flat in his face. Every half-baked thing he'd ever heard, he wrapped it up in one, including that. Who is he saying? James Woods is probably playing Joe Biden on TV to show people, what would have happened. And Donald Trump's really doing the shadow presidency. I'm like, bro, you are fucking gone. But that's what they believe. And people, they're fucking crazy.
They're on the fringes,
you got me on it. You got me on one. You got me on one. I lost a great friend to this stupid shit, Then I believe my fair share of stupid shit along the way. Right. You know what I like? I like it when conspiracies were cool, like aliens. And fucking when 9/11 happened, I can get behind that, there's no way that thing goes down without some sort of help in collusion from our own government, because you can't have a day where no planes are flying. Like things like that. Building number 7 didn't get hit, but it did get imploded. Those are interesting conspiracies to me. Beyond that, when you get all this new shit, I'm out. See ya.
Well, the alien stuff has got a lot of weight to it these days. The people that have been on Joe Rogan's show and other shows too, like Commander Fravor, and the Navy isn't denying that what he saw was what do they call UAPs or whatever, unidentified aerial phenomenon these days, rather than UFOs. So the fact that they're even trying to change the language around it hints that they're aware. Right. I mean, the authorities are aware that something's going on. And just near you, just south of you, I know it's nowhere near you, but San Diego there's a lot of activity off.
Yeah, that stuff happened years ago. And I've never had a doubt about extra dimensional, to me personally, that doesn't sound crazy, I mean, and I tell people, it could be time travel, could be us for the future, the past. If time travel is ever going to happen, that means it already happened, right?
Well, I did some research, being a journo, and I think I don't want to get this wrong, but the statistic is for life to flourish just in our solar system alone, so not the broader universe. The statistic is like something around 1 in 100 million, which is a real number apparently. Now, I'm not saying I don't believe in aliens because we don't know. We see like the God question. We just don't know. Nobody's really come back to inform us of what happens in the hereafter. We just have beliefs, right? But the transdimensional theory actually holds up with regards to quantum physics and theories around that. So exactly. I think rather than it being a flat linear plane, things sort of being folded next to each other. And it probably is us making tens of thousands of years' time, maybe millions of years' time, where we've long and truly evolved to not even needing a body. We've become part of the ether. Coming back to just observe some of the places we fucked up and went wrong, maybe. I mean, the thing is, who knows? Right. And conspiracy theories are just a way to try to answer these questions, I think.
Yeah, they are. And as I revert back to what I said earlier, it's not our lane. So if you're going to dwell on it, you're going to waste your time. If you could just have an interest in it and be more of a hobbyist about it and realize that you're never going to have those answers. Slayer said it, before you see the light, you must die. So, I mean, there's some things that just, they apply. There's a certain amount you don't want to be passive and give up or anything. I don't do anything of the sort, but I just realized that my place in the universe is more of an observer that will never quite understand it all. And I just got to deal with my family, my life, my guitars, I've got shit in my own life, in my lane, that I can't control what's going on fucking 5,000 lanes over that way and over that way.
Oh,
and I think that there's a certain amount of, comfort in knowing that you're only going to do your part in your lane. I could try to jump from lane to lane, and I have some sort of, I have some sort of public sway with a very small amount of people, or I can make a few thousand people go, ooh, but it's not that big, man. Then I listen to guys like, Stefan from the Deftones talk about, flat earth being a certainty. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to be one of those cats, It's like, it's just,
maybe they've just got too much time on their hands too, guys like that. Yeah, I don't know why they bother talking. I mean, he's a great fucking guitarist. I mean, he's fucking
awesome. He's a great dude. He's a great dude. I had good times with Stefan over the years. In fact, I got brought on the Jamie Jossa show the first time to do a flat earth debate because Tom Maxwell from Hell Yeah, they were starting to talk about conspiracies. Like, you got to talk about conspiracies. Craig Locicero, he's a big space guy. I was like, no, I'm not. I'm just a guy who talks and understands that I don't understand. I understand there's no understanding. That's what I understand. But I do know that our Earth might not be completely perfectly round, but it is spherical, and there's a million fucking things to demonstrate it every day. And if you've got to make up bullshit just to fucking, or believe in something just to somehow make yourself feel like it's, there's a greater truth being held back, I feel sorry for you, dude, because every fucking satellite that gets sent up in there, in our atmosphere, what do you? I had a guy, in fact, on that show, the guy, Flat Earth Dave, was like, well, that's all helium. They use more helium in NASA than any other thing. Why do you think they use that? Because they're hanging those things. I'm like, oh God, yeah.
So he's trying to answer. He's trying to put credible theories or put credible answers in front of all of these things that ultimately are just bullshit. Yeah, no, I understand your attitude toward conspiracy theories because it's mine too. I've talked about it a lot on the show, and I've said there is so much to worry about in the here and now. If you've got a family, mortgage, if you're in a band, your community at large, there is so much for you to be effective and to focus on there. Why bother with all of this bullshit that can never be proven? What's the goddamn point?
Well, if you wanted to go into something and make a difference, you said at a very young age, you either got to go into, like I said, some sort of military, expertise, and then you realize, well, if I know it, I can't even say it. Just like science, the highest level astronomers and scientists, they can't talk about what they really know. They wouldn't get the grants. They wouldn't get, they can't just blurt out the secrets of the universe. They would never get any kind of clearance to talk, to research what they research. You're not going to find out what's going on, at the CERN lab. They're not going to tell you each day, like a daily report about the God particle. You're never going to know. We're all just fucking people, trying to exist, man. And it's like I said, it's kind of comforting to kind of come to that conclusion and still be able to talk about these things without getting totally fucking wrapped up in them and losing yourself. It's a hobby.
It is a hobby, but some people take it too seriously. And I think having children is the great leveler, meaning that once you've got young lives to foster and to mentor and to raise, and you're entirely responsible for, a lot of the other stuff you just see through just naturally, because what's real,
right.
What's real and tangible is sitting right in front of you. And I read, Tom DeLonge might be onto something from Blink-182 or whatever band, Angels and Airwaves, whatever band he's playing in 2023. And there's the Starset. There's Starset Enterprise, I think they call it. What is that band? There's another band. These organizations seem to be seeding into the minds or sharing information with prominent musicians and people in the arts, if you like, and some sports too. Like you probably know David Icke. You probably heard of David Icke because he's the lizard guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So,
I've been familiar with David Icke for 30 fucking years, dude. Over 30 years. And Bill Cooper was my in the whole thing. So I've been down that road. I've read The Matrix. I had the book in my hands. I've read, Beyond the Pale Horse, all those, Behold the Pale Horse, but all those things. I've done it. I still never lost myself. I definitely got piqued interest. I still never lost myself. Here's the thing, and we can end it with this. I'm glad we're talking about something other than music because it's cool. It's interesting. This is interesting stuff. People should that are going to be offended because I'm blowing it all off. Don't be, because I just realized something that you might not. Okay, like you can, and I'm a revert back to what I said earlier. It's a lane that you're never going to fucking be a part of. It's not who you are. If you read something that you truly believe to be true that offends you greatly and deeply and moves you, like you're not going to change the world by screaming about it on the internet to your friends on a fucking post, or you're not going to do it trolling on somebody's post, yelling about what you believe to be true. And you should fucking believe what I believe because this is the truth. Because guess what? You don't fucking know, and you will never know because you're just you and you're not in their fucking world. Sorry. It's really kind of comforting to know that you don't got to get involved in that. And if you want to go fucking break up Pizzagate, you see what happens. It wasn't fucking there. What did you just do? You just basically fucking put your life in peril, at risk for fucking nothing that you could change. Even if there is pedophiles everywhere, they've always been everywhere. And you gotta get them one at a time when they fucking surface. Other than that, you're not really gonna fucking find them. Just telling you, it's like cockroaches, dude. They exist. Sorry, a horrible thing, but you're not gonna dig them up on the internet yelling at somebody. Not gonna happen.
And I'm guessing you won't be reaching out to John Schaefer anytime soon to do a tour.
I did an interview. I used to have a show. And it's called the Omega Wave Show. After Omega Wave came out, I did an interview with John Schaefer. And, in certain ways I was like, well, he's fucking really into it. Like, it's kind of, impressive how into it he is. But then, by the end of that interview, me and my friend Bill Shields, who had that show together, we called each other when we're done. We're like, dude, he's fucking dangerous. Like, he is dangerous. He's a guy who's, what he did on January 6th, being in the front row, and then in turn being arrested and then doing a flip over and fucking turning everyone else in. What else do you need to know? What else? I mean, what else do you need to know? Not just about Sean Schaefer, but about what he realizes about what he believed.
Yeah, I just can't understand why he risked his career that way. Either way, why would you risk your career like that?
Fucked. His career is completely fucked. And he'll have a few people that will always be into it and champion him. But, you know, the majority are always going to know there's the guy who fucking bet on the wrong horse, went all the way to the fucking, you know, into the race, and then backed the fuck out for self-preservation because he knew it was all bullshit. That's who fucking John Schaefer really is when it comes right down to it. He's another guy who got duped, who believes a bunch of bullshit, and then had to fucking back the fuck out.
Indeed, mate. Yep. Well, believe me, we could talk for hours on this topic here, but I better let you go to the next one or enjoy the rest of your evening. It's been a pleasure to finally catch up. I
gotta make dinner. I'm making dinner. The wife's working tonight. She's a nurse, so it's like right now it's 4:00 right on the button here. So I'm gonna I have a tri-tip going on the grill that's smoking right now.
Nice work, mate. No worries. Enjoy that, and thanks very much for the chat.
Yeah, thank you. It was very interesting. I'm glad we breached for all the people that wanted to just hear about music. Sorry, this is the fun stuff.
It is indeed. Well, until the next one, mate, I'm going to come up with some more interesting. I'll be more planned. I hadn't had any questions about that side of the social consciousness, but I'm going to develop some more in preparation for our next one. Because
I would be happy to do a part 2 with you. We can do that.
Yeah, sweet. No worries, mate. That'd be great.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, brother. Have a great one. Cheers.
You too.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gents, a conversation with Craig Locicero, and as I said up top, and as you can hear, or as you heard, toward the end there, Craig's keen for a part 2, I certainly am, so I'll hit him up sometime in the near future. Now, if you enjoyed that chat, there are many more just like it over at scarsandguitars.com, and if you like listening, maybe you like reading, because I've written a book all about the conversations that take place here on the Scars and Guitars podcast. Click on the link in the banner and you'll be taken to a marketplace of your choice. Download a sample, and if you complete the purchase, please do hit me up because I want to thank you personally. Now, I've got some more information to share with you about the book, but before we get to that, I'll bid you a fond farewell. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith, and I'm the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast series. Until next time, it's a very goodbye for now.
This is Eric Rattan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew Mackay-Smith.
I've been the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast since 2017. The first musician I interviewed for the show was David Vincent from Morbid Angel, and things have just snowballed from there. In all, I've posted almost 650 podcast episodes featuring conversations with many of the leading lights of rock, heavy metal, and beyond. It just got to a point where I thought, I need to write a book about all this, so that's exactly what I did. In Scars and Guitars Volume 1, you'll read a heap of deep reveals and commentary, such as Des Fafara talking about Coal Chamber and why the band will never return.
You know, if you're a band just starting out, you need to hear me. Do not start a band with partners. Ever.
Yeah, wise words there. Sage advice, mate, for anybody.
Don't ever, because I can't go do Coal Chamber right now unless I get others involved.
Phil Anselmo talks about the episode in his career which gives him the greatest sense of accomplishment.
I think the staying power of the fans and the staying power of the songs, you know, whether it's Pantera, Down, or Superjoint, the fans remember the songs.
Alex Skolnick from Testament confirms that, yes, playing the guitar in Ozzy's band is anything but an ordinary gig. Will Silent Oz from Dimmu Borgir write a book? Pa from Sabaton gives advice to people who want to start a band.
Look at the team around you, look at the bandmates. If the guys want to be on the stage, then it's all cool. If the guys want to be backstage, then it's not going to be cool.
Current and former members of Cradle of Filth discuss the band's seminal 90s material. Read about the reaction to George Lynch and Mark from Suicide Silence's comments when they throw shade at then President Donald Trump.
We have this idiotic monster, you know, this egotistical, self-aggrandizing, complete piece of shit in there. I just can't understand how we've gotten to this place.
And yeah, we kicked a hornet's nest with Sepultura. Percussive overlord Gene Hoglan talks about recording with Chuck Schuldiner.
Chuck was always, he was very, very open-minded, and he was into having his musicians that were playing with him just reach out for the best stuff that they had.
Phil Campbell from Motorhead discusses what it takes to get sober. John Five answers his critics who dismiss his tenure with Marilyn Manson.
My name is John Five, and Manson gave me that name, and I had some of the best years of my life in that band and learned a lot.
And we get the lowdown on Treyarch Zagtoth from those who would know, including his mother. All across Scars and Guitars Volume 1, there are moments of tension, relief, tragedy, exhilaration, and throughout it all, you'll obtain insight that I believe no one else has managed to obtain from many of your favourite artists. So treat yourself. Scars and Guitars Volume 1 is currently available as an ebook with a print edition on the horizon. Follow the links attached and download a sample. I'm sure you'll be compelled to read the whole book.